This evening we're going to begin in Deuteronomy chapter 34, and we'll be going to a couple other places beyond that. But Deuteronomy chapter 34, this is the final day of Moses. Moses has lived his life. He is 120 years old. In those years, his eyesight has not diminished. His basic physical stamina has not changed at all. He is just as healthy, so it would seem, as he has been for a long time. He grew up in Egypt for the first 40 years of his life, was a shepherd in the wilderness for the next 40 years, and it was at 80 years old, that God calls Moses to be the deliverer, to bring bring the Hebrews out of Egypt. And it is with a very powerful hand that God does this. Now, they have been in the wilderness for in the last 40 years of his life is in that wilderness, but now it's with a hard-headed sheep. This is with Israel now. And he is going to outlive a lot of people. That's just the truth. You have a generation there that is not going to be allowed to go into the promised land. That's what they're waiting to do. They would have gone in very quickly, actually, after being prepped around Sinai, after some other things that they were doing, building the tabernacle and in all its furnishings. They were going to be going into Canaan and begin taking the land. But you have the 12 spies that go in, 10 come out, 2 are faithful, but 10 come out and they have nothing hopeful to say, that we are going to be dead. If we go in there, we are nothing compared to them. We are like grasshoppers in their sight. They are enormous people in there, and there were. That's where Goliath. Goliath has to come from an ancestry that's going to be about as big or bigger, and so the likes of Goliath were already around. It would have been his great grandparents, I suppose. They would have been living in that land. There were giants in the land. But you have the 10 that discourage the people, the 10 that undermine faith, those 10 spies, and they refuse to go in. And so God says, all right, it's going to be 40 years. You're going to be 40 years in this wilderness. And that means Moses too. And that means Joshua too, and Caleb, Joshua and Caleb were the good spies. They're going to have to stay for the 40 years. They're all going to have to stay for the 40 years, even though they didn't join in with the same kind of murmuring and complaining and refusal that most of Israel did. They didn't join in with that, but they're going to have to wait as well. But you've got a lot of people that are going to die in those 40 years, and Moses is going to outlive all of them. He's going to outlive them all. And there comes that generation. There comes that day when it is the 40 years are up, and now they're about to go into Canaan. And we come to chapter 34. And we're just going to read the whole chapter. Chapter 34, beginning in verse 1. Then, Deuteronomy 34. Then Moses went up from the plains of Moab to Mount Nebo, to the top of Pisgah, which is across from Jericho. And the Lord showed him all the land of Gilead as far as Dan. So here we have Mount Nebo, which is tall enough to be able to he's going to see a lot from there. And you can. I've never been there, but I've seen photos from the top of Nebo. And you can see a lot from up there, and understand that the land that they are given, Israel is given, is just really a slender piece of land. It's longer than it is wide, but it's not that big of a land, and he can see it from there. As a matter of fact, he can see all the way to the Mediterranean from there, which is precisely what it says. Verse 2, all Naphtali and the land of Ephraim and Manasseh, all the land of Judah, as far as the western sea. Well, that's the Mediterranean. And the south and the plain of the valley of Jericho, the city of palm trees, as far as Zoar. So here he's being shown, personally shown, it's him. He's being personally shown the land he's never seen. And the land he's never going to step foot in. He's going to bring them up to the door, and then it's Joshua that takes them in. And there's a reason for that, and we will get to that in just a bit. Now, verse 34, then the Lord said to him, this is the land of which I swore to give Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, saying, I will give it to your descendants. I have caused you to see it with your eyes, but you shall not cross over there. Here is the very thing that Moses was inspired to write in Genesis. Genesis chapter 12. And going through the life of Abraham, Moses would have penned those words. And now he's seeing it come to pass. He's seeing it in his lifetime. Abraham couldn't see it in his lifetime, but Moses is now seeing it in his lifetime. And he's seeing it, it's about to be fulfilled. But he's not allowed to go over. So Moses, the servant of God, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab according to the word of the Lord. And he buried him in a valley in the land of Moab opposite Beth Peor, but no one knows his grave to this day. Moses was 120 years old when he died. His eyes were not dim, nor his natural vigor diminished. And the children of Israel wept for Moses in the plains of Moab 30 days. So the days of weeping and mourning for Moses ended. Now Joshua, verse 9, now Joshua the son of Nun was full of the spirit of wisdom, for Moses had laid his hands on him, so the children of Israel heeded him and did as the Lord had commanded Moses. But since then there has not arisen in Israel a prophet like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face, in all the signs and wonders which the Lord sent him to do in the land of Egypt, before Pharaoh, before all his servants, and in all his land. And by all that mighty power and all the great terror which Moses performed in the sight of all Israel. End of Deuteronomy. Okay. Now, we'll just say something. We're discussing lessons from Mount Nebo, is what we're discussing this evening. And there are questions as to who wrote this last bit. That Moses dies, he dies in verse 5. Who writes all this? Well, first off, it's God who sends the information. So it really doesn't matter who wrote it. Moses could have written this before he left. And all this information is given to him. And he knows very well what's going to happen. This could very well have been given to Moses. Is it possible? Yeah, of course it's possible. And Moses writes it and he finishes the book. The book is entirely by his hand. And he knows what's going to happen. Okay, that would be nothing new. He is a prophet, by the way, and God provides him with information. Now, it doesn't matter who we say penned it, because they're going to be putting down some things that really no one could know. All right, it could be that Joshua takes up Deuteronomy chapter 34 where Moses could not. That's also possible, and there's nothing wrong in saying it. But there's still information that neither Moses nor Joshua could have known without God's help. One is that, and he, that is God, buried him in the valley of the land of Moab. Well, how do you know that except God told you? How are you going to know that? Opposite Beth Peor, but no one knows his grave to this day. Well, how do you know that? Except that God tells you that. No one can know that. So Moses could have written it. and it go with Moses' hand all the way through, or Joshua could have picked it up, and that's okay as well, because Joshua is going to begin the book of Joshua now. Now, here's just some things, some quick lessons concerning Mount Nebo. One, everything comes to an end. As hard as that is, there would be no one in Israel would have known of a leader except Moses. Nobody. And of course, there would be that generation that were born and reared in the wilderness. And of course, it is Moses. But prior to that, there was no leader. Prior to him, there is nobody. He's the one chosen by God to bring them out, and he has been leading them. No one else has been leading them. He is it. And there is no greater leader in Israel until Christ. There's none greater. There's no king greater. There is no prophet greater. There is none greater than Moses until we get to Christ. And everything comes to its end. Even, 40 years in the wilderness, while that is something to celebrate, because Israel is going into Canaan finally, and stop all the wandering, and now actually have a place to settle. But with that good news also comes the bad news that Moses isn't going in, that his stint is up. Everything good comes to an end. And we see with these words, and the Lord showed him all the land of Gilead as far as Dan, all Naphtali, and the land of Ephraim and Manasseh, all the land of Judah as far as the western sea, the south, and shows them all that. What Moses is seeing is he's seeing the future of Israel. And it's bright. That's the next part of this. That he is seeing where they're going. And he is seeing their future. He can see the future Jerusalem. He can see that. It's not Jerusalem at the moment, but he can see that. He can see all the places, all the mountains. He can, as we said, he can see the Mediterranean. He can see all of that. He sees what is going to be the future, and the future is a brilliant one. Now, it will be a brilliant one for always if they're always faithful to him, but they're not. While this generation going in with Joshua is a very faithful generation, not everybody is. Someone like Achan can just completely decide that he's not going to follow the will of God and do as he pleases. He's going to be taken by a bit of material wealth, a bit of fascinating things, a bit of valuable things, and he's going to take it when he was told not to take it. Concerning Jericho, you don't loot it. All of that's to be destroyed. All of that goes to God. It doesn't belong to anybody. That goes to God only, and that's that. But Achan decides he's not going to do that. He decides, and he brings sin into the camp. But as far as that generation is concerned, they are a rather faithful generation. They're pretty good. And under Joshua, they're pretty good. Now, later on, things are going to change, and later on in that generation, things are going to change. And Joshua is going to be ending his book by telling them, make your choice. If it's Jehovah, then choose Jehovah. If it's the God of your forefathers, your fathers on the other side of the river, then okay. If it's going to be the gods of the Amorites in whose land you dwell, all right. But make your decision today. Don't falter in that. Don't hesitate in that. Don't be wishy-washy or double-minded. You decide what you're going to do, and then go ahead and commit yourself to it. But as for me and my house, as he says, we will serve Jehovah. And he lets them know that's the right decision. That's the right decision. Now, here the land promise is being fulfilled at last. And how many hundreds of years was it in the process? It's quite a number. From Abraham being told of the promise to now there actually is a nation to take it. Abraham with just his men do not make a nation. And Abraham with just Isaac do not make a nation. But now there's a nation that's going in. They went in as 70 individuals thereabouts, going into the hospitality of the Egyptians there at the end of Genesis. They come out possibly 2 million, but there's no real knowing how big that number was. But it's a lot of people come out. It's far more than 70. And truly now they are a nation. And here is Moses seeing where all is going to be transpiring in the future of Israel. Now, our next part in this is anyone can fail God. Anybody. That includes someone like Moses. And we see, let's just look here, that so Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab. Well, how did he die? Well, God killed him. God killed him. And Moses knew this was going to happen because he was told it was going to happen. Moses knew precisely. Let's go to Numbers chapter 27. Numbers chapter 27. And we'll begin in verse 12. Okay, we got a little bit longer. I mean, when we're in the book of Numbers, we have a little bit longer before we come to that point of Moses' death. Now the Lord said to Moses, so Numbers chapter 27, verse 12. Now the Lord said to Moses, go up into this Mount Abarim and see the land which I have given to the children of Israel. And when you have seen it, you also shall be gathered to your people as Aaron your brother was gathered. Gathered to your people, what does that mean? Died. That's what it means. Okay, you've joined your fathers. You've joined those before you. Verse 14. For in the wilderness of Zin, during the strife of the congregation, you rebelled against my command to hallow me at the waters before their eyes. These are the waters of Meribah at Kadesh in the wilderness of Zin. Okay, what did he do there? It seems like a minor offense, but God doesn't take it as being minor, that he did not hallow God at the waters before their eyes. He was to speak to the rock, and the rock would provide water. But he struck the rock, as he was told to do earlier in a different situation. He's told to, considerably earlier in their time in the wilderness, and that one is not long after they've gone through the Red Sea. Earlier, he's told to strike the rock, and the rock produced water. Now this time, God tells him to speak to the rock. That means God changed what he wanted Moses to do in the way that he wanted Moses to do something. Yes, he did. That not every rock Moses struck is going to produce water, and sometimes God wants him to do something else. And that is putting Moses to the test. That's exactly what it's doing. It's putting Moses to the test. And there are times when Moses would lose his temper, he became extremely angry coming off just from Mount Sinai and smashed the tablets because of what he saw. Become extremely angry with the people and extremely frustrated with the people. And there he struck the rock. And because of that, God said, you're not going into the land. Now, Moses is going to be among the saved, yes. Because while he disobeyed God at that point, he continues to be faithful to God. All right, he continues to be faithful. Matter of fact, we can know he's among the saved simply from another mountain that we're going to, but not tonight, and that is the Mount of Transfiguration. Who is there standing before Christ? Well, Moses is one of them. He's standing there. And we can know that Moses, in fact, is saved, but he's not allowed to go into the land of Canaan. Verse 15, then Moses spoke to the Lord, saying, let the Lord, the God of the spirits of all flesh, set a man over the congregation, who may go out before them and go in before them, and may lead them out and bring them in, that the congregation of the Lord may not be like sheep which have no shepherd. I want you to see this. What Moses has just been told, you're not going in. You're going to die there. You're not going in. And what does he say? What's his concern? His concern isn't, well, this is kind of unfair, or of all things, or that, pleading with God, let me go in. His concern is Israel. There's got to be someone to replace him. And that's precisely what he's saying. Because Israel, if leaderless, Israel is going to be just a bunch of sheep scattered about. There's no telling what they might do. There is no telling what they might do. They need a leader in this. Verse 18, and the Lord said to Moses, take Joshua the son of Nun with you, a man in whom is the Spirit, and lay your hand on him, and set him before Eleazar the priest and before all the congregation, and inaugurate him in their sight. So they have to understand. They have to understand what is happening. They've got to understand that this is Moses and God saying Joshua is the next leader. And it's going to be as official as it gets, which is quite official. And you shall give some of your authority to him, that all the congregation of the children of Israel may be obedient. He shall stand before Eleazar the priest, who shall inquire before the Lord for him by the judgment of the Urim. At his word they shall go out, and at his word they shall come in, he and all the children of Israel with him, and all the congregation. So Moses did as the Lord commanded him. He took Joshua and set him before Eleazar the priest, and before all the congregation, and he laid his hands on him and inaugurated him, just as the Lord commanded by the hand of Moses. So everybody knows there is no misunderstanding of, okay, Moses just died, what next? Okay. They know they've got somebody in the wings. God is not going to leave them empty-handed. He's not going to do it. A new leader is being readied. When it says that you're going to give him some of your responsibility, some of your authority, and in verse 20, what does that mean? That means he's going to begin doing certain things that Moses would have been doing. But now Joshua is doing it, so that they know, yeah, it's Joshua. Joshua is next in line in all this. And understand, this is not like Kings, of where this would go to a son of Moses. This is more than that. This is a spiritual leader. Joshua is also going to be a military leader and also prophet in this. And Joshua is going to be the second leader after Moses. He's going to be the second leader. Moses is first, Joshua is second. Now, also in this, note, how many times did Moses do precisely what God told him to do? Because we just see this. Verse 22, Numbers 27, verse 22, so Moses did as the Lord commanded him. How many times did he do something like that? Well, a lot. A lot. And he struck the rock when he was supposed to speak to the rock. He did not, and God said, you didn't glorify me in front of the people. Because of that, even though with all this other obedience that he has done, because of that, he's not going to be allowed to go into the land of Canaan. God is no respecter of persons. Now, as we've already said, Moses is among the saved. He's among the righteous. He's absolutely among the righteous, and that is provable, actually. But God is no respecter of persons, that even someone like Moses who makes a mistake like this, there's going to be consequences to it. And this happens to be the consequence. He's been faithful in all these other things, but he did this, and it mattered to God. He struck the rock, and it mattered to God, and therefore he's not allowed to go into Canaan. God's not a respecter of persons. Now, let's go all the way. We have read Deuteronomy 34. We read the whole chapter. Now, let's go to the book of Jude. Because here's another thing concerning Mount Nebo. And it's an interesting thing. Very interesting. And this is something, whoever wrote the end of Deuteronomy, and as we've said, it could have been Moses, it could have been Joshua. It doesn't matter. It's both from God, and either one would be from God, and either one would be writing things they could not possibly know. But here's the way that the Bible is constructed. That there can be events recorded like in Deuteronomy 34, but there are certain details that aren't brought out there. Certain details that might not be brought out for a long time, for some other prophet somewhere down the line. And with Jude, that is the case. If we look in Jude chapter 1, Jude 1, there's only one chapter, but verse 9, we see this. Yet Michael, the archangel, in contending with the devil, when he disputed about the body of Moses, dared not bring against him a reviling accusation, but said, "The Lord rebuke you." This would be one of the events that happened on Mount Nebo, that God took Moses, they took him. And of course, he's being welcomed in Hades. He's being welcomed there in Abraham's bosom. He's being welcomed there. But his life is over. But there's something going on behind the scenes that, once again, nobody can know except God tells them. And here is one of those things of where, while Deuteronomy 34 tells us where Moses was buried and the fact that you're not going to be able to find his body. Okay. And just try. You'll fail. I mean, it's an impossibility. That he is buried in a valley of the land of Moab, where there's a lot of valleys in Moab, and those valleys can be rather large. Where are you going to find him, and how deep is he? You're not, and it says, but no one knows his grave to this day. God did that for a reason, because he doesn't want the bones brought back. He doesn't want some kind of shrine built to Moses. He doesn't want any of those things. And so in the process, there's something else that went on, and it is two very individuals with names that we know of. One is the archangel, as a matter of fact, Michael, and the other is Satan. And there is a contention over the body of Moses. And with what Jude is saying, Jude is bringing this out and saying that even at that, with this whole thing that occurred with the body of Moses, Michael the archangel just says, "The Lord rebuke you, Satan. The Lord rebuke you." And what did Satan want? What did he want to do? Well, we don't know. I mean, his mind is sick. He's a sick individual. I haven't the foggiest idea what he would have done, but it wouldn't have been good. But there is a fight there. Evidently, Michael had to be there as far as the disposal of Moses' body. But our point in this is that even the people in that day, though they got the revealed message of what happened to Moses, they didn't know everything. There are things beyond our sight that occur, and that we couldn't know about it except God tells us. We couldn't know about it. There are always things happening outside of our vision. Always. And sometimes I wonder if we could actually see it, if we wouldn't be, well, we would see the danger we're in, and we'd see the wickedness that is around us, and we would see so much of what is described as that the host of wickedness. A host of wickedness is an army of wickedness. But there are things just outside our sight that we know nothing about. Now, in this concerning Mount Nebo, God provided for everybody. He provided for Moses all the way till he died. And he provided Israel with not just the land, but the next leader to take them in. Moses is a shepherd, and he's got his sheep in the wilderness. Joshua is a general. And now it's time to take the land, and it's time to go to war. And it's going to be taking one city after another, one point after another. That's what's going to be involved in it. And Joshua is going to have to be just as faithful and just as attentive as Moses ever was. And the people, for them to receive the promise, they're going to have to be faithful as well. And up to a certain point, they are. Up to a certain point. Now, we need to look at our own lives. God supplies. God supplies for us, but every good thing comes to an end. And our lives, every one of us, our life here comes to an end. And we need to be ready. Ready ourselves for judgment. This life is not here for our pleasures, just to spend it on our pleasures. It's though God certainly gives us those things. It's not here so that we can spend it recklessly or carelessly, but in service to God, which is precisely what we're going to be doing on the other side. It's precisely what we're going to be doing in heaven. As we say, heaven is not going to be a place where it's just eternal free time. We will be serving God. Why would He be preparing us here? There's something for us there. I can't answer everything or much of anything, to tell you the truth. But we will be serving Him there. We will be glorifying Him there. And I've asked this question before. For someone that doesn't like worshiping God now, what makes you think you're going to want to worship God then? What makes you think that? And the thing is you don't want to be in hell either. So there is no other option. So maybe it's time to get serious. Maybe it's time to begin to truly be faithful to God. Maybe it's time now to get your life in order and put yourself in a place of faithfulness to Him. This evening, our lives going by another day. One day closer to judgment, one day closer to even to our death, but one day closer to judgment. And Christ returns and He judges us all. And how will He find us? We'll be judged according to this standard. That's as simple as it gets. Standard has been given to us. We are to follow it. We ask this evening, if you need to respond to the invitation, that you come as we stand and sing.